LSU had their spring game yesterday. I have taken a random sampling of the country, and it seems like there's a thought about LSU that goes a little bit of something like this. They caught lightning in a bottle in 2022. They may fade a little bit in 2023. I don't know if you have felt that way. I don't know if you have experienced that. Now, I'm not talking about LSU fans. I'm saying outsiders, the outside noise that you're supposed to block out. I've gathered some of that about LSU, which is interesting. We'll talk about it in a second. DB is something that everyone's been focused on down there. So defensive back, they got an entire secondary pretty much out of the portal. And it was a work in progress yesterday. It has been a work in progress all spring. And I cautioned you guys that this is not going to be some finished product at the end of spring. Anyone who thinks that is setting themselves up for disappointment. I think they were down a couple of starters even within that group yesterday. They had a bunch of defensive linemen out. So the version that got put out there yesterday, not exactly the version they hope to start in week 1 against Florida State, but they leaned heavily on the portal, work in progress. I probably have a net of a little bit more concern about the secondary coming out of spring than I had going in, but it's not like a, panic button level of concern. It's just, let me keep an eye on it level of concern. The best case scenario was going to be things look promising. That was going to be the best case. When you go get all those guys out of the portal, you got a bunch of coaching turnover and all that stuff. That's the best case. So this is pretty much just like par for the course normal when you consider what they went and did. But what is obvious is why Brian Kelly did not take too long to announce that Jaden Daniels is going to be a starting quarterback, which I found a little peculiar. Peculiar shouldn't be a hard word to pronounce. When they were coming out of the bowl game, he just went ahead and said, yeah, Jaden Daniels is going to be our starter. And I'm like, whoa, hold on now. Maybe he is, but do we really want to be announcing that? And Brian Kelly, well, he didn't answer me, but Brian Kelly did not hesitate. And there's a reason. Jaden Daniels is the best quarterback they have. So, that's pretty much cut and dry. He was 10 of 11 yesterday, 168 yards, 2 touchdowns. But then Garrett Nussmeier looked pretty good too. 5 of 8, 139, 2 touchdowns. It's a good quarterback situation right now. Remember, Walker Howard transferred to Ole Miss. They got a pretty good quarterback situation. It's a different level of trust, though. When you watch Jaden Daniels play now, I don't know what it is. I'm not a quarterback's coach, but I would venture to think that they would listen to me say, does he look a little bit more trusting? Does he look like he's a little bit better fit in this offense? Does he look like he's processing things? Does the offense just feel like it's flowing a little bit more smoothly? They would probably listen to me say that and say, yeah, you're actually right, and here's why. And then they would talk for an hour. So I think I'm right about that. And Brian Kelly obviously does because he named him the starter like months ago. 2 names that I think are very, very integral to that panning out, to Jaden Daniels at quarterback being all he can be. One of them is Noah Cain at running back, who had a good day yesterday, and who Brian Kelly called one of the sleepers of that team right now. Tailback has been an area of concern for several years at LSU, so if he's all of a sudden ready to take it up a level, that's nothing but good news. And Kyron Lacey at wide receiver had a good day yesterday. And that's important because if what I saw from him yesterday is who he is, that's a 3-headed monster at wide receiver outside of a couple of places in the country, the likes of which no one else can match. And those kinds of places are like Columbus, Ohio. So they're in a really good position at LSU right now. That team can be a very high variance team because also at the end of spring, you're listening to Brian Kelly talk and people are feeling pretty good. And you always want to know what's the area or two that you're going to focus on. And he said, well, our Achilles heel could be depth. And that's not just one position. So anytime you have a team like LSU and you just don't get injured, they're capable of doing really special things. This team could go to the playoff. If you were to tell me they're not going to get really banged up badly this year, that is a playoff caliber team that they have. But this is the real world. Injuries do happen, and you got to hope and you got to pray that it doesn't disproportionately bite one position group more so than the others because we play 12 of these things, and about 6 or 7 of them are going to be pretty nip and tuck, one possession point spreads. And if all of a sudden you have a gutted interior offensive line or you've got a gutted cornerback room, that's the difference in 11-1 and 7-5, 8-4. And that's the way it works. And no one cares about those excuses. And that's why you start in spring. It's very smart by Brian Kelly. Starting in spring saying, hey, it's okay to feel good, but just know we do have an Achilles heel, and it's depth. It's depth. That's what we got to worry about. He's not wrong. He's not wrong, but he's got a pretty good team. I would say if I were to measure this team against the one they had last year, this team right here should be better than the one they had last year. And the one they had last year won the West. So that's no guarantee it's some repeat or bust. But the college football playoff national title odds in the SEC, I mean, you got Georgia, Bama, LSU. Those are the 1, 2, 3 in the SEC. And nationally, it's Georgia, Bama, Ohio State, Michigan, USC, and then LSU sixth. So they are right up there in that conversation. If anyone was arguing with me and you disagree and you think I'm just pumping LSU's tires, well, I'm doing it along with the guys who built those big buildings out there in Las Vegas. They tend to agree as well. So really high variance program, though. Really interesting program to watch this year.